By extremely popular demand, I'm back today to discuss who has been considered for and who I personally think will make my home nation and the team I'll obviously be supporting, Team UK, for the Overwatch World Cup 2019. Before I get into it, I just want to make people aware I'll be taking a short break from these videos to bring you guys my Overwatch League Stage 3 Week 4 review tomorrow, before updating my power rankings on Tuesday. But if you are really enjoying this series, be sure to let me know which team you want to see next when I return with the next one of these in a few days' time. As I've mentioned before, Team UK was one of the biggest surprises of the 2018 World Cup, as they took down the highly favoured Team USA in the quarter-finals, and then gave South Korea the most competitive series in the semi-finals, before falling just short in the end, here and in the 3rd-4th playoff against Canada, in a great series that went to all 5 maps. Fans and the team itself will be approaching this year's event with a lot of hope and confidence, with the committee remaining largely unchanged from last year, with Stylusa still general manager, alongside Hayes as head coach. This year, Bad Pachamari was voted in as community lead, taking on the role that Chipsa held last year. It is important to remember that although Team UK has a top 10 seed, meaning that Blizzard will help in funding their accommodation and travel expenses at BlizzCon, because they were ranked 6th, it means that unlike the top 5 of South Korea, Canada, China, France and the USA, who all have straight buys to the group stage, the Brits are going to have to once again qualify for a spot at BlizzCon beforehand, in an open single elimination bracket. This means, as far as I understand it, that during this qualification stage, they can have a roster of up to 12 players, and it's only if and when they make BlizzCon that this then has to be reduced to a final 7-man squad. But for the interest of this video, I'll be focusing in on the final 7 only. Soon after the committee was put together, the 7 Lions announced they'd be holding tryouts for those invited, and others who met eligibility. They subsequently broadcast these scrims, as well as posting a picture of everyone under consideration. So I'm going to assume that if a player's name isn't on the list, they aren't making Team UK this year. Of course, as we can see, there are many players that went for each position, with varying talent levels, from Overwatch League to contenders and lower. But in order to keep this video from not running on too long, I'm only going to debate in detail those I feel have a genuine chance. With all that out of the way, let's get straight into it, starting at the heart of the team, at the main tank position, where I think it comes down to a straight choice between Fusions and Numlocked, with others, like Jay Karu, still a bit off in my eyes. Numlock has enjoyed a relatively successful past year with British Hurricane, finishing in 2nd behind Angry Titans in the first European Contenders season of this year. Within the 3-3 GOATS meta, he's shown off how effective his Rhine can be, and this was reinforced in the UK Tryouts, with a major highlight being a massive shatter play from him. His Winston play is also very respected, but from what I've seen, he does have a tendency to go for high risk, high reward charges on Rhine, which sometimes results in him being punished. Furthermore, he sometimes, through his approach, or just his positioning, gets separated and killed by himself early in teamfights. Fusion, by the same token, can be accused of similar issues, as recently he too has found himself separated from the rest of his team, normally due to him being over-aggressive that gets him killed early in teamfights, or sees his exposed backline being jumped upon. That said, I think I'd struggle not to go with Fusions for this position. The aggressive engagements that he initiates can be deadly, and I think the biggest thing going in his favour is his shot calling and leadership abilities. They were clearly on show during the last World Cup, and have continued to be praised into this Overwatch League season, so it would surprise me if such an important character of last year's team, and success, missed out. At the flex tank position, it seems very likely that Smex will retain his position from last year, having kept a solid level of consistent quality from the last World Cup on NRG, with some decent finishes in North American contenders, and from what I've watched, his diva play still looks strong, and with his recent move to Montreal Rebellion, he clearly hasn't fallen off the pace. I heard some murmurs from a few people that Morsey could potentially challenge him for this spot, and I wouldn't rule out entirely if the coaches thought he did really well in the tryout scrims. That said, going back over his contenders footage of late on Angry Titans, what worries me is an inconsistency in performance, where one second he's playing quite well, and then the next he finds himself on his own, away from the rest of his team, and getting demeched as a result. Consequently, I'd be comfortable sticking with Smex for this year, especially having already had the synergy and coordination with the coaches and what will likely be a very similar looking team for this year, which should make planning around strategies and competitions easier to get started on. Although as a wildcard who I don't know much about, Hunter was a player who did impress me a lot with his performance during the tryouts. Like in the main tank position, there is in my eyes a close conversation to be had at the main support position, with the 2 top candidates being Cruz, the Paris Eternal, and Funny Astro, who's on a 2-way contract with the Atlanta Reign. Both have really enjoyed this meta on Lucio, with an impetus on being involved in teamfights with influential boops. Cruz has had a mixed season so far with Paris, as his play has on the whole been very aggressive, which has seen it bring both success and failure. In terms of the positives, his shot calling has been strong as a vocal player, which has subsequently been reinforced by a great impact on the frontline through boops and harassment, which has often been in line with Eternal's success. I also think he's shown some really strong play on Baptiste as well. But there are some negatives, which isn't surprising since Dogman's proclamation of Cruz as a feeder has caught on. Whilst this aggression worked very well early on, he's since had to turn it down a notch after being focused down and punished by a lot of teams, who noticed that he'd sometimes push in too far and could be isolated on his own. Worse, however, in my mind, has been his ultimate usage, but although at times coming in clutch for his side, has too often been layered on top of his flex support ult, which is a death sentence at pro play, and he also seems to always use Sound Barrier early into Sombras, which is bizarre, so he's definitely not faultless. Funny Astro, meanwhile, has really played his way into the conversation, with some great displays on the Atlanta Academy, but saw them fall short in the first season of North American Contenders this year, to eventual winners Envy, before a solid showing at the Atlantic Showdown, where they finished 4th after being defeated by the Angry Titans in the losers bracket. Comparatively, I've seen much less of his play, but his Lucio has looked really promising and consistent, tailor-made for this sort of meta, and of all those I've spoken to about him, who I greatly respect the opinions of, they've given him a lot of praise and understand why. This leaves me with a very difficult decision between these two, but in the end I'm inclined to bring back Cruz again this year for two main reasons. The first being with this team remaining fairly similar, especially at the flex support position. Having already developed a successful synergy last year already puts Team UK in good positions. Also, with a lot of rumours circulating around the 2-2-2 lock and meta changes, I think Cruz provides a little more depth through his play on Mercy and Baptiste, so while some might say his Lucio is just edged out by Funny Astro, I think this needs to be taken into major consideration. By the end of the day, I don't think you go wrong selecting either. In my opinion, the only surefire, guaranteed lock throughout this entire side is found at the flex support position in Boombox. At his best, he is easily one of the top 10 Zenyatas in the Overwatch League right now. Beside Carpe and Poco, he's been one of the more instrumental reasons behind Philly's success. Add to that the fact he was on the side last year, and with my choice of Cruz, he'd already have worked together alongside his main support. It seems an absolute no-brainer, with no other challengers really coming that close to competing with him and giving him a genuine run for his money. But now we reach another tough checkpoint in the assembly of this team, which is at the DPS position, where again, I find it likely that Team UK will choose 3 options to complete their 7-man roster. This position group arguably is the most strength and depth, that consequently makes it very hard to choose from, but I reckon that Kib will make it into the side. An Overwatch League talent on the Guangzhou Charge hasn't seen too much playtime due to their preference to run Eileen on Sombra, but from what we have seen, his Brig has been solid, and assuming it hasn't fallen off a cliff, his Roadhog is still strong, but overall his flexibility will be a great addition to the team. Beside him, I'm very inclined to include KSP, who I've been highly recommended to watch by a friend who watches a ton of Contenders. Going over one of his games on XL2 against Mayhem Academy, he dominated and popped off, and in a more recent series, his Zarya play has been incredibly impressive and effective, looking like an upgrade over Mikey A's from last year. Speaking of Mikey A, he once again is in the running and will potentially have a leg up on this competition, having been involved in the setup last year. That said, over the past year, since the last World Cup, he hasn't had too much consistent competitive Overwatch experience, with a couple of outings on unheard teams, including Freefall, but ended up defeated in Overwatch Open Division, and this time was split with a short stint as an assistant coach on the Uprising Academy. Therefore, with so much talent and competition for places here, unless the coaches think he knocked the tryouts out the park, I'm not sure he has that strong of a case for inclusion. For my final spot in the team though, I look towards 3 players in particular, A10, Zeal and Lynx, and I apologise for not being able to find pictures of them. I haven't seen too much of their play, but I've heard a lot of praise for this trio as a whole, who definitely should be under consideration. However, just from my own viewings of the tryouts, I'd have to go with Zeal, who like Hunter was incredibly impressive on a variety of different heroes, and I certainly don't think he'd look out of position if selected. But again, let me know who you guys would choose. Therefore, just to recap and make everything perfectly clear, my final BlizzCon roster of 7 for Team UK at the World Cup 2019 will be Fusions at main tank, Smex at flex tank, Cruz at main support, Boombox at flex support, and lastly, the DPS trio of Kib, KSP, and Zeal. And with that, we've reached the end of my Team UK Overwatch World Cup video, and I'd like to thank you for watching. As I said at the start, you can expect my Stage 3 Week 4 review tomorrow. Otherwise, if you enjoyed and don't want to miss out, please like, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter. There's continuing competitive Overwatch coverage and content, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.